So I'm here today to talk about my REI Quarterdome tent. Some issues I've been having with the seam tape on the Rainfly flaking off. I think I got this tent as a gift. I think it was around 2008. It's now 2020, so it is 12 years old. About 3 or 4 years ago, I started to notice some of the seam tape coming off the Rainfly, and it was just kind of flaking, looked like large chunks of dandruff, and some of it was getting in my tent, kind of creating a mess. At the time, I just used a brush and just kind of cleaned off what I could, and went over it with seam sealer just to try to be able to get by with it. So now, a few years later, it's just continues to flake off more, and now I've got quite a mess to deal with. So we're going to show you what I'm talking about here. So this is kind of what it looks like. It's this beige, brown, flaky stuff. It's all coming off, and it's looking really ugly. I'm not sure how much of this, the brown beige stuff, is the original seam tape and how much of it could be the seam sealer that I put over it. But nevertheless, you can take and pretty much just scrape this off with your fingernail all the way down to the fabric. This is like one of the seams, and then here's what it kind of looks like around the zipper. So as you can see, it's really, really ugly. And I kind of looked around on YouTube, on Google, to see what other people have done. No one really has any good, there's really no good ideas out, no one has any good ideas out there for how to effectively just clean it off and restart from scratch. Most people just suggest just kind of brushing that off and living with this part of it, and then applying the seam sealer to the outside of the Rainfly, and allowing it to soak in from the other side. But I didn't want to do that because this looks really nasty. And then the other issue is that I keep this folded up in a stuff sack all the time, and this stuff that has flaked off gets folded up in the Rainfly, and it gets kind of, as it's folded up, it gets kind of sticky and gooey. So it not only does the seams look like a mess, but now I've got this stuff stuck all over the fabric itself, and I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to deal with that. But I kind of looked around online for things that people had used as kind of a solvent to dissolve it, and keeping in mind that I want to remove the stuff from the seams, but I don't want to use something that's going to damage the coating on the fabric itself. So I have actually cleaned off a couple of the seams already, and I'm going to show you what that looks like. So here's the seam that I have cleaned off. You can see that it does look pretty nice. This one originally did look like the other two seams that I showed you. I still do have some of the stuff that's stuck to the fabric out here, and I'm not really sure how I'm going to take this off. I might just try using a little nylon green pot scrubber and gently flaking it off. I want to be real careful again not to damage the coating on the fabric, the main part of the fabric out here. The coating that's on the seam itself, I'm not too concerned with. Well, obviously I don't want to tear it up, but I am going to seam seal this. So I'm being very careful not to damage the fabric or damage the stitching of the seam. So I'm going to show you what I did. So the idea is to get as much of this excess seam tape off as you can before you hit it with paint it with the alcohol. The reason being is the alcohol will make this stuff real soft and gooey, and so if you leave all of this on here and hit it with the alcohol, you're just going to have one great big gooey mess. So you can kind of see here, get a better idea how it's doing. Here's a spot that's a little worse. right here. So you just kind of start simple. I have a little bristle brush, nylon bristles. Obviously you wouldn't want to use a wire brush, but just try to kind of brush as much of that stuff off with the get as much as off as I can with the brush. This one, this seam is actually coming off pretty well without a lot of work. And then after I get what I can off with that, I have a little knife here that's got a kind of a rounded tip, and I'm kind of using this area of the blade right here to do my scraping with, and I'm just kind of doing I'm not putting hardly any pressure on this at all because I do not want to damage the stitching or the fabric. So you got to just kind of hold this out, hold the fabric tight, and then just come along and get what you can off. And then like right here along the edges. So I'm trying to get as much of this off as I can, and it's hard to hold this and do the camera and get a good camera angle, but you can kind of get the idea. So it's just a matter of going all the way up the seam, brushing and scraping and brushing and scraping, kind of like that. So I would do the whole seam like that. This seam here is one of the shorter seams, so this one's not going to take quite as long. And you can see this spot right here there's a lot of tape on it. On the other side there's a loop that's completely opposite of this. So I found on the other stitches, or on the other seams, that it made that a little bit harder to get off because it's like the tape was much thicker there, but you can kind of see it coming off. And again, I'm putting very little pressure on this. So anyway, you can kind of get the idea. So then I'll do the whole seam. Obviously, I'll do the whole seam that way. But when I get off everything that I can possibly get off with the knife and the brush, sometimes the fingernail just works better than anything too. If you don't care what your fingernails look like when you're done. So when I get that all scraped off, I'll paint it with a little bit of the alcohol. And this is, again, is denatured alcohol. I don't know if isopropyl, somebody said isopropyl would work. I just got a little chemical brush that I've cut off real short. And I just kind of paint it and get it soaked a little bit. And if there's anything left on there, this area here actually came off pretty clean. I would go along and scrape it a little more and get some more off of there. Paint it real good with the alcohol. And then I'll just take a paper while it's still wet. And I'm only doing like 5 or 6 inches with the alcohol at a time because the alcohol evaporates so quickly. But anyway, once it's painted real good, I'll just take a paper towel dampen with a little bit more alcohol, and I will just wipe it down real good like that. And let it dry and just move on. I probably will come back again a little more with these right here on the edges of the seam. But I figure if there's any, I mean, the whole idea is to get all the flakiness off. If there's any, if the alcohol dissolves any of the tape and it infiltrates into the seam, into the fabric, it's not going to hurt anything. It's going to be fine there. In fact, you know, just as long as I can put seam sealer over the top of it and not have it flaking off again in a couple years. So we're just going to do that to the whole fly. Like I said before, it's tedious, but if you got a tent you really like, I probably would not bother with this with a cheap Walmart tent, but this REI tent has been a very good tent for me, and I'm not really ready to give it up or replace it. So we'll just carry on till we get it all done, and we'll see what we got. So I'm done with that seam that I just started, all the way from the tie out to up here where it meets the door. This junction here, it's maybe about 4.5 to 5 feet of seam, and I don't know, maybe it took me 15 or 20 minutes to do so. I already had a couple of the other seams done when I first started videoing this, so I don't know, I may have a couple more hours worth of work just to get the old stuff cleaned off, and then I'll still have to figure out what I need to do out here on the fabric to try to get some of this off. So we'll just carry on, and we'll see you at the end. So I've got the flies now stretched wrong side out on the tent, so I can kind of see what I'm got left here. You can see the seams actually turned out not too bad, probably better than I'd hoped for, maybe. Considering what they did look like. So now on the tent fabric, I'm left with all this other crud. And I did go on the REI website and looking under their gear tips. They're recommending using rubbing alcohol and a little scrubby, which is kind of... So I got one of the little green scrubber pads and kind of started working on it. And I don't know if it's still just wet or so I kind of just soaked. It was a scrubber, had a scrubby, the little green scrubby on one side and a sponge on the other. So I kind of saturated this end of the sponge with the alcohol and kind of rubbed it on here, and you can kind of, I don't know if you can see it on this or not, but there's a light spot there. I don't know if, so I'm thinking that it's probably dissolved the coating. And also notice when I was scrubbing, I had my hand underneath, and I could feel the alcohol coming through it, and my hand was coming out sticky. So I think the alcohol is attacking the coating, and it does make it scrub off fairly easy. The problem is, even though you're just kind of taking these spots like this and just kind of dissolving them and smearing them around, and it never really comes off the fabric. It's still stuck to the fabric, it's soaking into the fabric, but you can't just wipe it off and flush it away and get it completely done away with. So I'm going to go back to just kind of with the scrubber pad. I'll get a board, like a little piece of square plywood, and put under the fabric, and then I'm just going to try to dry scrub it gently just to get this off of it. And you know, since it's gonna, then hopefully it'll be in a dry flaky form, then I can just clean it off with a damp water damp or a little bit of mild detergent instead of just dissolving it and smearing it all over the place. You know, I want to just completely get rid of it. So I'm just about done going over this, about as good as I can get it. So I've kind of changed directions once again. I was looking online for the polyurethane coating that you might spray on the underneath side of a Rainfly, and I didn't really find anything. There were some older products out on the market that were no longer available. There was a product called made by Texsun, which was a polyurethane spray coating for camping gear. But if you read a lot of the commentary, most of the people have posted questions about what to do about it, and of course the pat answer is well, you just need a new tent. But there was one website it was a custom tent maker out in California. They had a little article about different types of tent fabrics and the coatings that were used. And apparently silicone over polyurethane is probably the most common, and that means they put a silicone water repellency coating on the top side, and they put a polyurethane coating on the underside. And I think it's mostly just for cost reasons. There doesn't really seem to be any rhyme or reason why they use polyurethane. And in fact, after you're doing some research, polyurethane is really not completely waterproof. They get a lot of water repellency out of it because they just add several layers of it, which of course adds a little bit of weight to the fabric. But they just basically build up several layers to try to increase the water resiliency of it, or the water repellency. So this one company said the best fabric coating configuration, I guess, is silicone over silicone. And I read on a couple different spots where I know the tent makers tell you not to machine wash your Rainfly, and I think it's because it will remove the polyurethane coating on the underside. And after getting to thinking about what I'm doing here, I don't have any confidence in getting rid of this tackiness. And I think just by putting another urethane coat over the top of it, and you can't buy the spray, it seems like, anymore. Most of it is brush on. You paint it on with a paintbrush, and it's like that's just going to be a huge mess. That maybe you completely removing the polyurethane is what I want. And after doing so, I would get you can buy the silicone spray. I think Nicky Wax makes a product. That either, if I could get rid of the tackiness on the underside, I would just try waterproofing the top side, and if that would shed the water and prevent the leaking, then that would be plenty good enough. Of course, I would go through and re-seam seal the seams on the underside. And I might even, if I am successful in getting the urethane coating off the underside, I could also silicone coat the underside. So I would basically convert my Rainfly from a silicone over urethane to a silicone over silicone. So they say just using just a mild detergent and maybe machine washing, and I don't think I'm going to machine wash. I think I'm going to get a big plastic tote and put some woolite in it and let it soak for a few days and just kind of hand wash it, and then maybe go through 2 or 3 iterations of that to try to get the silicone or the urethane coating off of it. Because I don't really want to be, I don't know what that urethane is going to look like after it's been in the machine. I don't want it going down the drains, and we're on a septic system. I don't want it messing up the septic system. So I'm just going to hand wash it in a tub, in a plastic tote. So I'm just about done cleaning all of the tape off that got stuck everywhere. So I'm going to do the hand washing and try to get the polyurethane coating off of it, and then I will probably go through and make one more pass at getting any loose stuff off of it that I can, and then I'm going to get some of the silicone spray and waterproof the top side, and probably test it, and if it's rainproof, I'm just going to quit on it. So that's kind of what I'm going to do, and hopefully this will be the last change in directions that I'm going to make on it. So we'll see what happens. So I've been soaking this now for a couple hours in just a woolite and warm water, and I come out here and kind of agitate it every once in a while. And so you can kind of see from the color of the water. I don't know how much of that is just dirt off the fly and how much of that is the coating that's discoloring the water, but I wouldn't have thought the fly would have been that dirty, but it is 10 years old. So my next step is I'm going to take this out and wring it out real good, and then I think I'm going to put it through a couple of rinse cycles and rinse and spin in the washing machine. We've got the high efficiency washer that does not have the agitator in the middle, so it should be relatively safe to put this in there. I would not attempt that if we had an agitator washer. So it looks like I may have gone a little overboard with the woolite, but that's okay. So we're going to rinse it out, and then we're going to hang it up to dry, and then we'll see what we got. So I started this project, this video, back in May of 2020. It's now January 2021. Just a lot of things came up. Summer came along and the gardening season started, so I just kind of lost motivation in finishing it. But the last thing, video I shot was the last prior thing I did to this was the washing in the woolite. And that seemed to really do the trick. I was really happy with the way it turned out. This is the underside of the Rainfly. I flipped it over so I could do some waterproofing and everything to the underside. The woolite just completely washed away the urethane coating on the underside, which was what was creating all the stickiness and everything. Besides the seam tape coming off. So it dried out real nice. After I dried it, it was real clean. You can see all of the gooey stickies are all gone. So this is actually the finished product. I started out on the top side, and I put some waterproofing on there. I used the Nick Wax Tint and Gear Solar Proof. I think I got this at REI, or I may have ordered it at REI online. I don't think they had it in the store. So you just spray this on, let it set a couple minutes, and then you take a damp cloth and wipe it off. And there's some videos online about how to use this. And then also on the top side, I used a seam sealer. I used the Sill Net by Gear Aid, and there's some videos online on how to use this too. You basically just you can thin it out with mineral spirits and get it kind of liquidy, and then I just took a small brush, like a small chemical brush, and I brushed it into the seams. I did that on the top side, and then of course you let it dry. So I was kind of on the fence about whether I really needed to waterproof and seam seal the underside. And then I got to thinking, my tent is a 3-season tent, and so it's mostly screen on top. So on the cool nights I do get some condensation, and it all collects on the underside of the Rainfly. So I was concerned that if I did not waterproof the underside, that the fabric would just soak up all of that moisture, and then my Rainfly would just be saturated with water on the underside. So I didn't want that. So I went ahead and did use the solar proof on the underside. And then I thought, well, I've got the stuff to do it. I might as well just seam seal the underside also, even though most people claim you don't really need to seam seal the underside. So overall, I was really happy. All the little stickies are gone. It looks real nice. It looks almost, I won't say like new, because it is 12 years old and it's had quite a bit of usage. But most people, it's kind of nice, and I thought it might be of benefit to somebody that would know or could see that this can be done, because a lot of people, if they're faced with that, they would just throw the tent away and get a new tent. And I would have done that, except the tent itself is in excellent condition. I've taken real good care of it. And it's been a real good tent as far as keeping me dry. I've been in a lot of rainstorms with it, and I've never gotten wet. So I just wasn't ready to part with it. And I think it was like a $250 tent when I bought it, or when I got it. It was like 2007 or 2008. And I got to reading online on some of the reviews, and it's a common complaint with this vintage of REI Quarterdome that the urethane coating on the underside of the Rainfly starts breaking down, and then it creates that sticky thing that I've experienced. So it's 30 degrees out and there's snow on the ground, so I really couldn't take it outside and just put a garden hose on it. But I have kind of sprayed it down with some water, and you can see it beads up real nice and runs off. So I'm very confident that it's it's going to be okay as far as waterproof, rainproof. So that's about the end of the project. If I would have just worked on it from start to finish, I don't know, I worked on it after work in the evenings, maybe 2 or 3 days a week for, I don't know, maybe a month. So I don't know how many hours I got into it. I think if I was going to do something different, I would have done the woolite wash at the very beginning, because I think it would have gotten rid of a lot of the stuff that I spent time scraping off with the pocket knife. That's about the only thing I would have done different. But like I said, it does look really nice. The top side looks just as nice as the bottom underside. So that's about it. And good luck, I guess, if you decide to do this, and we'll see you later.